So Richard, we're ready for you to go live now. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to begin.
Hi. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Hello and welcome. And thank you to everyone everywhere who just took part in RMP Hum's Choral Viral, led by Juliana Preston. So I'm going to start with some housekeeping. As Lisa just said, we're live streaming on YouTube. So if you don't want to be seen, you can turn your camera off. And if you want to change your name, please do so now. Otherwise, the protocol is cameras on and mics off. So after my short introduction, Curator Lisa Hall will introduce the exhibition and 7 artists will briefly talk about the work that they've made for Acts of Air. So there'll be questions at the end depending on time. If you'd like to go ask a question, you can type your name into the chat at any time. And when we get to the end, I'll come to you for you to ask it depending on the time we have. So, good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where in the world you are. Welcome again, and thanks for joining us for this second launch event for CRiSAP's new online exhibition, Acts of Air, Reshaping the Urban Sonic, curated by Lisa Hall. As many of you know, CRiSAP, Creative Research and Sound Arts Practice, is a research centre at University of the Arts London, based at London College of Communication. Our remit since 2005 has been to extend the development of the emerging disciplinary field of sound arts and to encourage the broadening and deepening of the discursive context in which sound arts is practised. This exhibition is the second event of Unearthed, a festival of listening and environment, a critical reflection of our relationship with the environments that we share with other people and other species. This festival will allow us to revisit areas of research and practice related to sound and listening that we have kept returning to over the last 15 years. So the ongoing series of events planned for Unearthed in those far off times before we had even heard of COVID included many collective, geographically located, ear-led interrogations of our environment and our relations to them. We hope that this will be able to happen at some time in the future. However, we'd always planned for this online exhibition as a way of communicating and working with artists and audiences all over the world in order to collaboratively reconsider our evolving relationships with our urban environments. Obviously, we had no idea in our initial discussions just how much those relationships would change in such a short period of time. Many of us will have experienced the swift disappearance or quietening of the familiar daily urban sounds that we have all taken for granted, and an accompanying drop in overall ambient volume to the increase in being able to hear the unaccustomed sounds of the natural world, or the change from the echoing quiet of streets emptied of people to the sounds of protests from around the globe and the accompanying responses from state and police. The exhibition has been curated and the works have been produced during lockdown, and they offer a variety of ways to both rediscover and reconsider our relationships with our built and socio-politically constructed environments. Over 200 artists from 42 countries submitted proposals, and the 14 artists in the exhibition are based in 11 different countries. Unlike CRiSAP's other online exhibitions, Click Anywhere, A Louder Whisper, Vermilion Sounds, Sound Traces, Not for Human Consumption and The Voice and Its Double, which can all be found on the CRiSAP website, every work in Acts of Air needs to be performed or realised. We do not know of many or even any other exhibitions where this is the case. Each of the works provides some sort of form or structure through which we can explore our cities of sound and the sound of our cities anew. It is a massive exhibition. To engage fully with every work would, I feel, take several days. Each individual work needs different kinds of preparation and advanced planning, and as such it demands a lot from us, and it demands our participation, both collectively and individually, and our commitment, and does not allow us to be passive consumers. It reminds us that we, to some extent and to varying degrees, have control over aspects of our environment. So I look forward to enacting the works, and I hope that you will too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cathy. I'd just like to start, so I'm Lisa Hall, I'd just like to start with some thank yous. So straight off the bat, a big thank you to Cathy Lane for commissioning this exhibition and for all the support during the process of bringing it together. I'll just run through a few other quick thank yous, I'll be brief. Obviously a big thank you to the artists for sharing and making these fantastic pieces that we're about to explore in more detail. To the review panel who joined Cathy and I on regional batches of the applications. That was Jordan Lacey, Diane Urola and Carol Parkinson. We had funding from the LCC research departments, so thank you to them. And lots of help with testing and checking from artists Hannah Kemp-Welsh, Francesca Oldfield, Helena Alameda, and of course to our wonderful tech team who were in the session today. And then also to come back to the performance that many people just participated in or watched on YouTube. So that was Juliana Preston's RPM Hums Viral Choral. I'll just read the text about the performance in case you missed it to give context to the wonderful performance we just were part of. RPM Hums Viral Choral is an online live performance directed by Juliana Preston. It invites participants to listen and tune to electrical motors to make their life force palpable. During this relational encounter, participants can absorb, sound, mimic and emulate the motor's vibrations to quiver, tremble, shudder, shiver and spasm as complementary and counter-humming material body. The noise pollution produced by electric motors and everyday irritants to urban life is heightened by a deep hush emerging from various levels of pandemic isolation across the globe. Imagine the chorus of our collective efforts wafting through longitudinal and latitudinal and longitudinal currents. So Juliana's with us in the session, and if you had questions, it'd be great to then talk about the work. We'll have questions at the end of the session. Okay, so without further ado, I'm very pleased to announce the launch of this online exhibition. So Acts of Air Reshaping the Urban Sonic is now open. It went live this morning. You may or may not have had time to yet click on it and have a look around. So I'll share my screen now and give a little tour while I talk a little bit about the exhibition's themes and how it all works. So bear with me while I just share screen. Okay, so that should be visible. Okay, great. So here it is. Here is the exhibition, Acts of Air Reshaping the Urban. So this is an online exhibition for offline participation in the sense that it asks you to go out into urban environments rather than staying in behind a computer. So it brings together 14 relational sound artworks that offer a means for you to explore and interrogate our cities of sound. So we have 14 fantastic artworks for you by a brilliant selection of artists who are based around the world. Half of those artists spoke at the first event we had, and the other half of the artists are here tonight or at this present to share their work. So they are Vitório Azevedo, who's based and speaking to us from Brazil, Anna Lan in the UK, Colin Priest in the UK, Anne Leilehua Lanzilotti, based in United States, Raheel Khan in the UK, Jacek Smolicki in Vancouver, Vagné in Brazil, Agnes Paz in Chile, and Yara Marakawi based in Egypt. So after I've spoken a little bit on the theme of the exhibition, I'll hand over to the artists who will be able to tell you about their work and the inspirations behind it. So with the exhibition, I'll start by explaining how it works, because as Cathy mentioned, it's an unusual exhibition and it asks something of you. So it's hosted online, but as I said, it asks for you to go out into the urban to enact the works. It requires your participation. And what this means is that each artwork needs you to activate them in some way, to listen to them or to participate with them in urban spaces. So they're all relational. They're all made to be activated in urban environments at specific locations. So that urban could be any urban. It's wherever you are in order to activate those works. They simply ask that you find the location, which could be a source of water, a bench, a place where there is echo, in order for you to then cite and enact the works. So this exhibition is effectively the score or the prompt. Your urban environment is the gallery space, and the work is only realised when you enact it. So you are both audience and performer. And the works all vary in what it is that they need from you. Some will only take a few minutes of your time, others will take hours. Some require preparation for you to write scripts or to find things. Some ask that you do loud and public things. Others are quiet and internal and simply ask that you listen in certain spaces. Most are for solo engagement, but some are for groups. And generally all they need of you is to have a mobile phone with internet and a set of headphones and that loudspeaker function on your phone to work. So we very much hope that you will follow the scores and the instructions and go out and enact the works. And having done so, we ask one further step of participation from you, which is to leave a trace of your experience on our social media account, which is our Acts for Air Instagram. So it could be just a really simple post with a photo and a geotag of where you enacted the work and where you are in the world. It could be a description of your experience, or it could be something else entirely. The trace is just meant to be a simple gesture, but collectively from these simple traces, we hope to be able to hear each other's urbans, to be able to hear the different conditions in our different urban environments. It could collectively, these traces demonstrate to us where homogeneity does start and end, how our different geographic and cultural factors do create different possibilities, and how all of this could inspire us. So that's how it works as far as the exhibition exploring this theme of the urban sonic environment. But why relational works and why acts of air? So I'll just come down to the exhibition text I have written on the website, which I'll just read the first paragraph of. So over half the world's population live in urban environments, from small towns to megacities that house more than 10 million people each. Within the next decade, urban inhabitation will increase to 2/3 of the global population. So the urban environment is our main habitat. But in many ways, our construction of the urban falls short of our needs, its design and shaping not always in line with the wants of its inhabitants. While the built urban environment is often thought of as fixed and impermeable, the urban sonic is only partially fixed down. It's in the air, performed and enacted each day as we ride the buses, press the buttons and talk to one another. The urban sonic relies on our participation to a certain extent, to be turned on, to be sounded out, to be heard or voiced in specific ways. It requires something from us. This relational basis of the urban sonic leaves space for individual agency. It provides opportunity to push and pull a little at what this urban is in our ears and on the streets around us. And there's a little bit more, but I'll leave you to read that another time. So my intent with the exhibition was to bring together a series of work that really interrogated what it is that we're hearing in the urban now, in the present, how it's made, who makes it, and what effect we can have on it in order to shape it to our wants and needs. If we're building our cities of sound each day through our actions, how else might we choose to build it differently, and in what different way? And so it was through our open call that we found the fantastic selection of artists and artworks that all speak to this theme in very different ways. So I'll just take you over to that part of the website. So you can see here they're all listed by their locations so that you can work to the different sites that match up for you. And as I talk now, I'll just lightly scroll through these. I will, of course, pass over to the artists to talk more about the works. So all of these artworks approach what the urban is from very different perspectives. They will explore different conditions of being, of gender, of access, of how we connect with what's around us, of authority, of structure, of how it's built. But I'd just like to speak quickly on the different strategies that are being employed by the works collectively, and how they're all utilising different opportunities that this sort of sonic urban presents. So on one hand, a lot of the works are addressing those sounds of our surroundings, the sounds that are sort of fixed down at their source, the sounds of the structures and systems around us, the sounds that are made by others. So while these are fixed at their source, we can't change the sound that the bus makes or the fact that millions of people did, or usually used to, commute through the urban at a similar hour. But we can change how we listen to all of this and how we interpret it. So space for change in these artworks is coming in the form of our perception and listening, in our adherence to the teachings of how to hear, if to hear, and what to make of it all. So many of the artworks explore those boundaries, gently loosening at the rules of listening. Secondly, there's the sounds of us to consider with the urban environment, of our voices and our sonic gestures as we inhabit these spaces. These sounds feel less fixed and much more within our control, but of course they are instead bound by rules of custom, culture, law, and many others. So lots of the artworks in this show explore these rules, carefully sounding out these boundaries, challenging them or rewriting them in some way. And lastly, there's this notion of dramatic change that affects the fixivity of our sonic urban, where everything suddenly becomes unfixed, dislodged, or changed dramatically. So the exhibition has fallen at a time of this unprecedented global change due to the COVID-19 global pandemic and lockdown, isolation. It's demanded that our transport and services stop, vehicles, trains, engines, shops, restaurants, they all cease and human activity relocate to the home. So instead, a new urban sonic has been being made in our urban environments due to the changed usage within them. So this COVID time has uniquely demonstrated how the urban sonic is reliant on our participation, how it needs us to show up. It shows how fragile its construction is in many ways, and how it can suddenly become unfixed and fade away. So almost all of the artworks do contain a trace of this COVID sonic present, while some of the artists have focused on this entirely. But that's enough of the theme. Before I hand over, I'll just quickly take you to the traces page of the website, where we're encouraging you to get in touch and leave a trace. So this is our Instagram account. If you don't have Instagram, you can submit your trace by email to us, and the email's listed clearly just at the bottom here, and we'll pop it on Instagram. So that just becomes a collection that anyone can look at online without needing an account to Instagram. So yeah, just to say how we're really keen to hear from you, how and where you do enact these artworks, and what it is that you're hearing and choosing when you do so. Okay, I will stop sharing and pass you over to the artists. So speaking first is Vitório Azevedo. I'll just give a quick introduction. So Vitório is a multimedia artist from Porto Alegre, Brazil, working since 2014 with soundtrack composition, production, and sound design for award-winning performance art pieces in the theatre, dance, and performance. Also working in publicity, video games, and other areas. He's interested in the use of sound as a dramaturgical medium in its use as a storyteller by using different digital means, noise, acoustic interactions between waves, and through the image as an amplifier of sounds, having an objective of building sonic landscapes that transport the listener to an augmented reality of a place in which they're inhabiting. Okay, so over to you, Vitório.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. So, as Lisa said, my name is Vitório, and I'm a sound artist and music producer, and from Porto Alegre, Brazil. And first, I'd like to say I'm very happy to be here and to be part of this project. I want to thank Lisa and everyone at CRiSAP for organizing this project and bringing all of these artists together from all around the world to express themselves sonically about something which is being so rapidly reshaped by our current situation, which is this pandemic and everything around us. As Lisa said, I come from a background of theater workers. All my family works in theater, so this idea of this dramaturgy in sound is what really interests me, on how sound can be used to tell a story and transport someone to that story. Besides that, I have a very close relationship with the urban and the city. I've lived in one single city all of my life, and due to the monetary ups and downs of freelance work. I've lived in 15 odd different places all around the city, from the center to the suburbs and peripheries. And this has made me develop a relationship and a respect to these things and interactions that make a city what it is. So when I read the proposition for the Exaver exhibition and this idea of reshaping our urban environment and the way we look at it, I was instantly transported to this feeling of finding beauty and curiosity in these everyday objects, places, and situations, and the lack of experiencing it during this time of isolation. And the idea of bringing a piece to this, to people all around the world to experience, was what inspired me to build this piece, which exists in an idealized museum experience, where the gallery is our own city and where the works of art are actually some of the more obvious symbols of an urban environment, a bench, a bus stop, and a lamppost. And this ended up taking the shape of some questions about who designed these objects, who built these things, and what if they were made with artistic intent in mind? What if they meant more than the practical uses we attribute to them? And so the three audio guides and hidden pieces citywide gallery came to be. These are three audio guides designed to be listened in these specific places through the loudspeakers on your mobile phones, so that you are not only the trigger to this reshaping and the subject of the piece, but this augmentation happens all around you, hopefully raising the curiosity of passerbys and reshaping these voices of authority that we hear all around our daily lives. And not only these voices of authority within our own city. And I think this is one of the most important things to come out of this kind of projects. I think these are small steps towards this democratization and internationalization of art consumption. This slow dismantling of these voices that decide which art pieces should belong where and who has access to them. These authoritative voices that decide who owns art, regardless of authorship, acquired usually through money, sometimes straight looting or stealing, and the segregation of these works from the people who are responsible for their existence. This ability to pick up your mobile phone and to listen to a piece or watch and observe a piece or to participate in one, I believe is part of this process of reshaping, rethinking, and decolonizing our relation, not only to the urban, but to the places art pieces and artists occupy in it. So it's great to be part of this project and to be a part of this, and I hope the art touches you there. And I hope you enjoy not only hidden pieces, but also all the works from the different artists. And thanks again to CRiSAP for making all of this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And if anyone has any questions, please pop them in the chat box or just your name, and we'll come to you at the end, and we can have a discussion across all of the works and talks tonight. Okay, so next speaking is Colin Priest. Again, I'll just give a quick intro. So Colin Priest is a London-based architect and educator, senior lecturer at Camberwell College of Arts, graduating from the Architectural Association in 2003 with site-specific works, incorporating installation, writing, film, sound, performance, and archival material. Assembling found and made artifacts, media, and narratives, public encounters gently rub fragments of time, architecture, and memory, manifesting as inferral conversations, intervention, exhibition, publication, collaboration, and gathering. Over to you, Colin.
Great, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this exhibition, Lisa, Cathy, and the CRiSAP team. I was part of this. I listened on this morning, so it was great. And there's a train just going past me now, so you might hear that. Anyway, but also to meet new faces and some familiar ones too from all around the world. So thank you for that. So the title of my work is Breathing Machinery. And as Lisa mentioned, I'm coming from an architectural background. I am preoccupied with action in space, the processes of revealing hidden things and finding stories in some way to deepen a sense of place, but also to heighten an awareness of our changing world. The fascination centers around how we cooperate with space and how we enliven histories through gentle behavior, like walking, talking, listening, and so on. With lockdown, I self-isolated myself for no apparent reason to a 1.6 mile radius. And during my government-sanctioned 1 hour exercise walks, noticed them becoming increasingly peculiar. Primarily as I live in the London Olympic periphery in Hackney Wick in East London, an area undergoing significant transformation with swathes of construction sites for housing suddenly halted. In the first instance, this led to cleaner air as there was no more concrete dust, random deliveries and scaffolding. Then as lockdown dramatically decreased even more, road use in the nearby A12 highway heightened my sensitivity to the silence around me, despite having partial hearing loss. Birdsong came first, but then came the whirling of air conditioning units and air vents from the fish smokeries and breweries in the area. At the time, there was a lot of discussion in the media about critical care air ventilators, instruments for human survival. And on my walk, a thought percolated about how inside and out, air and its movement, these breathing machines had become critical care instruments to our human and urban survival. The quiet streets drew attention to the sounds of mechanical air extraction units on the buildings I'd not noticed before. Motors ventilating vacant warehouses and workplaces to become respirators for a work life interrupted, pushing air into these closed, dark spaces. Between necessary refrigeration, comfort and clean air, these ticking metal boxes for me are a symbol of our societal and environmental frailty. The work itself is an invitation to find a mechanical air vent and to listen to it for 30 seconds, to take a photograph, a portrait photograph of it, and a direct message or email the photograph with an onomatopoeic caption for posting on the Breathing Machinery Instagram feed over the exhibition period. These images and text will then be compiled for posterity into an online record designed with London-based graphic designers Workform. Breathing Machinery, the title of the work, underscores the slippage between body and architecture, how objects punctuate space and how space in turn punctures the body. To ask, what role do these extraction devices play in our cities after lockdown? What do they look like? Where are they? Can we rehear them again? How do we rehear them again? The request to translate the sounds onomatopoeically in any language connects text, texture, and architecture, an area I have been exploring for a few years now through various forms of collaborative action. The virtual setting of the work transforms this local moment into a global conversation, pixels and letters mingling to become portraits and paragraphs that we read and potentially misread quietly to ourselves, transforming an internal dialogue into a public exchange with the built environment. And I look forward to seeing some images from people. So thank you very much.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, again, questions please in the chat box. And speaking next is, check my notes. Speaking next is Leilehua Lanzilotti. Again, I'll just read a quick introduction for Anne. Anne is a native Hawaiian composer, performer, educator, and curator dedicated to the music of our time. A leading composer performer, her compositions often deal with unique instrument objects, such as her commissions from the Noguchi Museum involving sound sculptures or the Acri light sculpture installation. So I'll pass over to Anne.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thanks to you and Cathy Lane for including me in this exhibition and for organizing this event. I'm the composer of the work Beyond the Accident of Time, and I wanted to give a little bit of background behind the title and the piece itself. On August 6th, 1945, the United States of America bombed Hiroshima, Japan, killing 80,000 people instantly and 60,000 more by the end of the year in the aftermath from burns or effects of nuclear radiation. A few days later, the US bombed Nagasaki, where an estimated additional 80,000 died, half immediately and the rest by the end of 1945. The total casualties, of course, cannot be known, and these are likely conservative estimates. Next month marks the 75th anniversary of these bombings. My work, Beyond the Accident of Time, for percussion and voices, was commissioned by the Noguchi Museum and honors Isamu Noguchi's never fully realized bell tower for Hiroshima, which he made in 1950 during a 5-month stay in Japan. Quoting from the Hayden Herrera biography of Noguchi, Bell Tower for Hiroshima, which you can see here in the exhibition catalog, is a study for a 70-foot high bell tower that Noguchi envisioned for the Hiroshima Peace Park, then being designed by Kenzo Tange, was one of the largest pieces in this show. It consisted of ceramic bells attached to a framework made of thin wooden dowels that was intended to look fragile. The premiere of Beyond the Accident of Time was part of a concert in celebration of an exhibition, Changing and Unchanging Things, Noguchi and Hasegawa in Post-War Japan. As a whole, the works on the concert, titled Changing and Unchanging Sound, considered being open or closed, amplifying the sentiment of Noguchi and Hasegawa's conversations about cultural exchanges. In working through sonic and visual forms of how things break up and how they're put back together, the works on the concert all explored questions about what it is to be human, living in uncertainty and growing after destruction. The title of my work comes from a passage in the Isamu Noguchi Garden Museum catalog, in which Noguchi writes, "To search the final reality of stone beyond the accident of time, I seek the love of matter, the materiality of stone, its essence, to reveal its identity, not what might be imposed, but something closer to its being. Beneath the skin is the brilliance of matter." The score was created for the premiere to give the performers specific guidelines for the bells chosen for this musical reconstruction. The original bell used in the first movement is Noguchi's bell image, which you can see here. The original bells used in the last movement are custom-made oversized sleigh bells by Adam Morford. This is the smallest of which, the largest of which is larger than my head. Originally 2 6-inch, 2 5-inch, and 1 4-inch. This is the original 4-inch bell that he made in diameter. Noguchi imagined the bells for his sculpture, Bell Tower from Hiroshima, coming from all over the world. So in my piece, I interpret the sculpture not as a physical object that would be built in Hiroshima, but as a sonic concept that could be recreated by bells around the world. For this festival, I've made a version that you can perform alone. In finding an object to perform the work, the performer is taking ownership of the sound, action, remembrance, and making that object a part of the imaginary global bell tower. If you'd like to coordinate the end of the work with some sonic event in your town, be it church bells, cheers for health workers by people leaning out their windows, banging on pots and pans, you may do so. As we listen and recreate this space for reflection, we honor and remember what the sculpture represents. The score is only a starting point.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so the next speaker is artist Raheel Khan. So using a blend of synthetic sounds, field recordings, and fragmented textures, Raheel Khan's work explores notions of heritage, society, and the inertia of cultural progression. Often creating pieces with both personal memories and collective consciousness, his work dances between the private and public spheres, creating an intimate archive of abstract social commentary. Thank you.
Hiya, thanks for that, Lisa. Wow, I guess there's a lot of insightful work going on, so I'm really interested in experiencing them all. So yeah, my piece is called Oscillate Terrain. And just to give a bit of a background, it's focused on an area in Manchester. which is in the north of England, called Spinning Fields. So a bit of history. After the 1996 bombing in Manchester, there was a priority to redevelop the city and regenerate the city centre. And one of the priorities was to create a central business district. So a company came along in '97 called, I think they were called Allied London, purchased a plot and started investing. And over years, we saw this sort of this huge introduction to big tower blocks of offices, shopping sort of squares, cafes, bars. And it kind of tied in with the strategy for the government to get firms outside of London and get headquarters in the north. So it's been an interesting time, but I think essentially a lot of large institutions. So we're talking big banks, big accountancy firms, now have headquarters at that space. But it's been interesting to see at the start of lockdown, a lot of these large institutions have had to introduce mandatory working from home. So walking through this space that used to be really busy, full of people, vibrant, is now essentially empty. And that's where this kind of piece comes in. I'm introducing the participant to either go to Spinning Fields, or for people around the world or around the nation to go to their financial district. It could be big, it could be small, but there's always an area where companies, the big companies are, and to sort of listen to the audio score and kind of reinterpret the space. I think on a large, Colin, you probably might know more of this from an architectural background, but I think a lot of cities are now, they're non-designable in a way where community doesn't have that much influence. If you want to influence in how a city is designed, there's very little chance. So I kind of want to give the power over to the participant, go experience this space. And when we think about community planning, let's think about vertical planning, because that's how financial districts are usually built. And when we think of social spatial planning, we always think horizontally. So I'm introducing this concept of vertical planning, but also allowing the listener to experience this space in a new way, and also kind of give their feedback in an immediate way. It's a concept that I've kind of introduced with this piece, and I've kind of got a telephone number that people save, and they WhatsApp me their thoughts whilst they're sort of experiencing the space. So hopefully I get a load of random numbers. So yeah, that's basically it. Sorry, that was very scripted, but hopefully you go try it, because yeah, it'd be good to listen to your thoughts and stuff. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, and next artist to speak is Jacek Smolicki. He is an interdisciplinary artist, designer, postdoctoral researcher, and soundwalker interested in attending to, as in paying attention, and recording, as in calling to mind and heart, the diversity of human and other than human realms and existences. In his design and art practice, besides working with existing documents, archives, and heritage, Smolicki develops new modes of sensing, field recording, para-archiving, and mediating stories and signals from various sites, scales, and temporalities.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for your excellent work with this exhibition. Thank you, whole CRiSAP community, and thank you all artists. It's really a pleasure and privilege to be part of this amazing event. I will try to quickly introduce a work that I kind of appropriated to address the call. And it builds on an exploration of suburbs in Stockholm, where I'm usually located. Right now I'm in Vancouver, unceded indigenous land of coastal Salish people. But yes, normally I'm based in Stockholm, and the project started a long time ago as a kind of very unscripted exploration of urban environments at the outskirts, but then gradually turned into more structured and constrained form of exploration. And I just wanted to read one of the quotes from one of my most inspiring authors, who also kind of, whose words contributed to the shaping of the project. And it's Georges Perec and his words on the concept of the infraordinary. Infraordinary. So what speaks to us seemingly is always the big event, the untoward, the extraordinary, the front page splash, the banner headlines, Railway trains only begin to exist when they are derailed, and the more passengers that are killed, the more the trains exist. In our haste to measure the historic significant, let's not leave the essential, the truly intolerable, the truly inadmissible. So what I'm interested in my practice more broadly is to approach the practice of documentation and archiving from a kind of artistic perspective, but also try to rethink the ways, both when it comes to techniques that we are using to document, and also epistemologies and kind of points of view and perspectives from which we engage in documentation, working with documents, and thus the interest in margins, peripheries, whether they are urban or any other kinds. And there is another kind of quote I want to bring in here in the context of Georges Perec, which are the words of American President Donald Trump, who said at some point during his press conference, "You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden, who would believe this? Sweden." What he was apparently referring to was some kind of an act of unrest happening in the outskirts of Stockholm. But in fact, there was that night that he's referring to, there was nothing really going on. It was just one, normal, regular, boring, mundane evening. And he was trying to basically build his kind of political agenda, but by pointing how, Sweden has been dealing with the migration crisis. But in fact, he was not referring to any kind of act. So that kind of prompted me to investigate what actually happens on the outskirts on Fridays, even on Friday evenings. So I've been using different techniques of constraining my practice by, for instance, relying on the map, the underground map, and going to visit all the 13 end stations and exploring the vicinity of those train stations, which are called, suburban or outskirts and so on. And then trying to basically observe, through my act of listening, what is happening there during those days, and do some kind of a record of those just regular, normal situations. And then basically the guiding question has been what stories about the city can be revealed when our attention shifts from the central and spectacular to peripheral, visual, sonic, and this infraordinary. So far I managed to explore about 7 out of 13 stations or 13 suburban areas, creating some kind of short audiovisual expositions. Majority of them are based on sounds, but there are also other kind of media like GPS tracking of my walks and different trash that I collect and scan and use as a kind of collage material and so on. So in this instance of the project, I would like to invite participants to engage in similar activities by visiting urban outskirts that they are not necessarily familiar with, and use different kinds of techniques of aesthetic techniques of self-constraint to try to develop some kind of a perception of those places and some kind of new forms of documentation. Yeah, I think that's probably it. You can find more information and the link also to the website with the existing documentation in the little blurb on the website. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, and next to welcome artist Vagné. So Vagné is a sound artivist, multi-instrumentalist, producer, composer, web developer, designer, researcher. He develops experimental concepts in music using Afro-Indigenous traditions and the modernity of concrete music, elevating an Afro-futuristic thought and philosophy. Over to you.
Hello, Lisa. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Lisa and CRiSAP, for the invitation, and congratulations for the project. So, my name is Vagné. I am an experimental Brazilian sound artist, design and web developer. And I would like to invite everyone to emerge from this sensory experience produced in Cajazeiras, Salvador, Bahia, in Afro-diasporic city. The project investigates the sound relations provoked and felt and emerging in the natural environment, where people produce sounds that are camouflaged in the echoes of the constructions of public spaces, house estates, peripheral neighborhoods, villages, quilombos, and zuluns, other urban centers. Cajazeiras were once considered the largest housing complex in Latin America and place of unique sounds, beautiful sounds. The intervention also investigates universal stories, the healing processes through sound frequencies, human behavior within the process of social isolation, and the impact and the transformations caused by COVID-19. Okay, technically, this work, I worked with the free improvisation from berimbau, incorporate ambient sounds, soundscapes, events from agglomerations, manifestations, sampling, reprocessing, machine noises, birds, silence loops, drums, sound collages, scraps, algorithms, traditional songs, and Afro-Brazilian rhythms. About the work, Minha Raiz é a Árvore do Futuro, the title, in translation, My Roots is the Tree of the Future. You will hear an extended track from my new album called Mapas Sonoros, Cajazeiras in Lockdown. It was developed with experimental concepts using Afro-Indigenous traditions and the modernity of concrete music, elevating Afrofuturistic, philosophical, folk, and poetry. The work rescues ancestral traditions, the horizontal evolution of societies, and global aspects, sustainability, technological empowerment, and the manifestation of the Black cultural resistance against oppressions, and the silence that disrespects other cultures for many centuries. Through silences and sounds, I seek the process of healing the universe. I would like to thank the invitation of Lisa Hall and the entire CRiSAP team, to all the artists involved and everyone who will listen to this work. Good sounds, and see you till next time. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Okay, and I think our last artist, our last artist to speak is Agnes Paz. Agnes Paz is based in Santiago de Chile, is half Chilean and half Russian. She's a sound explorer, deep listener, composer, free improviser, and cultural manager. From a space of intuition and permanent research, using the theremin as an instrument, interface, or extension of her own voice on her solo work, she explores the multiple possibilities of sound and its transformations into atmospheres and landscapes.
Hello, Lisa. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you to CRiSAP for these amazing exhibitions and to make me part of it. And my work is called Triple Points, and it is an individual sound walk. It is ruled by the water and by the listening, and the relation in our urban spaces with the water and our listening. These both concepts are the backbones of my work. On case of the water, the triple point is the equilibrium point with a specific temperature and pressure where it can coexist the three states of matter. Is the coexistence of the solid, water, ice, liquid water, and the gaseous state, the vapor. And from these equilibrium points, the invitation is to make the connection with the three states of listening, which could be present in the walk. The inner listening, or thoughts, or inner fluids, and or breath. The external listening, the sounds of the streets, of our environments, and our urban space. And the third stage of listening, the sound that I create for the walk, the sound score, which will be the guide during the walk. I want to connect the water and the listening, because many times they both are forgotten on our cities and in our modern world. We are 70% water, and our planet is 70% liquid water. Our life and all the life on our planet has their starting point in the water. And we, as humans and mammals, come from an utero full of water. But despite this, we don't respect and don't take enough care about the water. In our cities, the water is piped, redirected, and contaminated. Our streets are covered with concrete, and that inhibits to the water their returning to the earth to complete the cycle and allow the reborn of the life. And here in Chile, our situation with the water is very hard and complicated. In a very big part of Chile, these past years, we experienced a big drought. But this absence of water is not only because of the climate change, it's more because Chile is the only one country in the world where our rivers and even the underground waters has been privatized. Our water does not belong to our country and to our people. It is belong to private corporations and international holdings who have more rights to exploit and profit from this water over the people who need this water to live. And through my work, I want to put back our connection with our primary elements and make these natural flows back to their channels, and understand the sacred meaning of the water and its presence in our city and inside us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I think, just having a quick check, I think we'll move over to questions.
We haven't had any questions in the chat so far. If anybody has a question or a question occurs to them, then obviously just either speak or type. Lisa, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. I wanted to ask Anne, in the original score, the composer talks of the bells in the sculpture coming from all over the world. And I think the way that you've brought the work together that really enables this in the context of this participatory score. So by asking people to go out and mark a bell in their own environment, finding anything that resonates in a bell-like way to mark out is really wonderful. And I just wanted to ask if you know more on that original request, if there's anything else that you can share with us on that notion of the bells coming from all over the world.
Well, I think just from doing research leading up to writing this for the Noguchi Museum, I was doing a lot of reading, and in a couple of the different resources that I was looking into, it noted that Noguchi had specified that he wanted the bells to come from all over the world. And when I was talking to the curator of the exhibit, Dakin Hart, who's a senior curator at the museum, he was saying, this idea of why would they want this horribly loud sculpture in Hiroshima? If the people there lived through this horror, why would we want this sound sculpture there to remind them of that horror? And kind of through talking to him originally about that concept of kind of surrounding the audience with the bells, and then talking to you leading up to this exhibition about the realization of it in a different global sense, kind of felt so spot on with the concepts that he had about those things, that Noguchi had about those ideas of kind of that what are the ways that we as individuals or as nations do harm to others, and what are the ways that we can be mindful about those things and remember them as to move forward in a different way. And so I think I don't have any other further direct quotes from Noguchi, but all of that kind of, the idea of specifically talking to curators about it was really lovely and helpful, and working with the other performers, and in line with Noguchi's ideas about being a global citizen and the idea of hybridity, that I hope that is true and honors one way of examining his work in a deeper way, although I can't speak for him myself. Hope that answers a little bit your question.
Thank you. Yeah, I really hope that that people feel comfortable sharing with us a trace of doing it, so that we have some connection with those bells, as I said, and anything, a picture, a tag of some sort, to start feeling that the collection of bells across the world being made and sounded and performed through your work.
Thanks.
Exciting. Do we have any other questions?
I've got a question. I feel quite sort of, this isn't the question bit. I feel actually strangely moved by our tonight and our session this morning too, because it's been quite a sort of privilege to listen to people, well, see people where they are and listen to them talking about their local situation, even though that might be a local situation that actually involves thousands and thousands of people. And I also feel kind of slightly overwhelmed by the incredible richness. I mean, you know, obviously I've looked at the pieces and we've talked about them a lot, but actually hearing about them from the artists is really amazing. So thank you all, really, really great. And I feel there's so many different routes open to us to actually go out and carry on these explorations guided by you all. I wanted to ask Raheel actually a question, because this, strangely, I feel this idea, you know, I live very close to the centre of London, and it feels like there's a whole bit of London that is totally useless to us at the moment. Well, quite a lot of it actually. And what we actually need is a massive park in that area, or some massive green space. So I was wondering whether you'd had many conversations with people so far, where they might have been reimagining what, how Manchester could be, or what sort of things you felt that people, might be thinking about.
Absolutely. So there's been a varied of sort of loads of different opinions, but it always, I think people are quite quick to get onto green space, which is interesting because you don't usually get that in sort of a financial district, but sort of find a response of turning this sort of roofs into places where you can grow vegetables, and people could congregate that feel lonely. Using floors for housing is a big one. There's a huge housing crisis nationwide, but I think Manchester, there's been quite a bit of research about what exactly in the city is affordable, and that's quite like a grey area. So yeah, lots to do with housing. But to be honest, I've tried not to really talk to too many people about it, because I want them to give their opinions through this piece. And I know me and Lisa were shaping it in a way where we try and inspire the participant, but also leave enough area to let them kind of think. So it's interesting when you do Spinning Fields itself is an interesting space because it feels like a public space. You can walk through the district and you can have a sandwich on a patch of grass, but it's actually all a private space, and hosting any kind of artwork there's so much bureaucracy. You wouldn't be able to sort of infiltrate that area in this way. So it's quite interesting to send people in there. And I think most financial districts would be of sort of a similar accord. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but I'll keep you updated. And also I'd like to likewise, if you could maybe have a wander to near where you live, it'd be interesting to see what happens to London actually, because there's so many buildings there, and it's not going to be used in the same way at all anymore. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, quite a lot of them were empty before we even started. So.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be great to hear these recordings coming in and imagining people off and about, wandering around, just, empowered to redesign their spaces. So we should be hearing those voice notes coming through, which would be great. If I may, I wanted to ask a quick question to Vitório. So the audio tours you have, or the audio guides that you've put together for us, they tell some incredible stories. I mean, of course, we talked about the work in depth, and then when you were making the work, and then being able to listen to the final piece, I was really blown away by the stories the journeys that you took us on those three pieces. It's fantastic. So for those that haven't yet listened, it's the stories of the lamppost and of the bus stop and of the bench, and how these are artworks in this citywide gallery. And so we, as the participant, are taking our phone and playing the audio guides of these artworks. And Vitório has woven these fantastic stories referencing political and philosophical and historical systems that could be in place in the urban. And it very much for me just started unraveling everything else when I finished listening. That was that wonderful feeling when you look around and go, what else might be changed? So I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about those stories coming together, really, how you put them together. Maybe if there's one you wanted to talk to, because that's quite a big question.
Actually, yeah, I started, thank you firstly. I started with these three objects that I think are the most common. I firstly filtered by which objects there are probably in any town, any city, everywhere. So a lamppost and a bench and a bus stop, you probably can find one exemplar of these things in any city, anywhere. So it started with these objects, and these were the triggers for the ideas. What can these objects represent? So I started taking small things of each object. For example, the light post. I started with the idea of the light. What does this light represent? And what if this was inside of a museum, and it shone a light down, and what this light represents? So I think the trigger was mainly the object in and of itself. Also because my idea was the experience to me is more important necessarily than what the stories tell. And actually I think the ideas and the stories, they are simple in what they represent, because I hope people can create new stories with new objects. They can look at a bus or look at something and think about, oh, what can this represent? So the idea was to keep it simple, and also to talk about things that move me and things that interest me. There were actually other themes I would like to introduce, but there wasn't time, or it started to get convoluted, so I ended up simplifying. But I think it all started with the objects in and of itself, and how can you create something believable, and also the limitation of, I don't know what the person is looking at. I don't know if the bench the person is looking at, it's made of metal, it's made of wood, it's made, I don't know if the light post is short, it's big. So it had to be open enough so it can be filled by the person. So I think a lot of the story and a lot of how the object connects with that story, it's actually inside the head of the person who listened, because I gave only the strictly necessary information for that object, but everything else is made by the person who listens to it. So that was my process, and yeah, I think it was interesting writing it, and I started with some rough ideas of what I wanted to tell, and then developed in the script. I ended up even calling some people to record some phrases and sentences, speaking as the artists who made the objects. And it was an interesting process to have this trigger, this idea where the story is something where I use to take the person where I want the person to be, or the state of mind I want the person to be, not exactly necessarily tell something and be, oh, it's that, you know. No, you can have an open interpretation about what these things mean. And I think it's part of these audio tours and museum guides have some cheesiness and some neutrality towards some subjects, some delicate subjects, which I try to bring into my work. That's it. Hope I cleared the question.
You're muted, Lisa.
Oh, thank you, as I'm animatedly waving my hands around. I was just saying I'm tempted to talk about some of the stories, but I won't, because it's all in the listening experience, and you need to go and find the bench before you listen, or the bus stop, etc., etc. So I'll stop there. And I mean, while everyone was talking about their works, and of course we've all talked before and we've explored the works together over some time now, but the way we've all come together in tonight's session and the way the artists were grouped together for the morning session was purely on time zone, so that we could find 2 time zones that we could all get together. But it's really interesting to see, as I think Cathy was saying earlier, so many other threads really coming together. So it's, I mean, this group of artworks and hearing of this fragility that's coming up again and again in these works, and this gentle behaviour that Colin mentioned. The bells looking fragile from Anne's, the healing process, the sort of fragility in that, and Vagné's work, and this access to water that is so essential and so limited, and this gentle shift in position that's coming out from the moving to the peripherals, hearing in Vagné's work and Jacek's, and this shift to the vertical with Raheel's work. It's really interesting how the works have ended up grouping around our time zones, whereas this morning's session, a lot of the artists were working a lot more with the voice, and we were exploring that aspect of kind of those rules of the urban, and how we can change the way in which we understand and are able to make sound. And yes, so just reflecting on that. If you do want to listen back to that, it's on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and have a listen. Were there any other questions?
Nothing coming for anyone else.
Okay.
If you have, I've got more questions. I just wanted to ask Juliana, actually, while you were talking about this morning, the performance this evening seemed totally different from the performance this morning. Totally different. I was just wondering whether you wanted to reflect on that at all, Juliana.
I'm not really able to. Kyoto, thank you for your question. I'm not able to, not because I don't want to. You're noticing the difference. I don't know if you are participating, but when one is participating, you become, I believe, everyone becomes immersed in a very close encounter with both themselves and this environment and this motor, this vibrating, rotating, stimming motor. And I think that it becomes quite challenging to step out, unless you physically step out and turn off your sound and stop your own humming, to witness the whole. So yeah. in a way, this iteration of the RPM hums work is a disruption of wholeness on purpose, show the to experience the merits of not seeking wholeness. So we're not all in the same space, we're not all doing the same thing, but it's not possible to hear and feel the difference that you're possibly. So maybe you could describe. Would you be willing to describe the difference?
No, I couldn't. Sorry, I don't think I could that easily. I mean, I was thinking when you were talking, yeah, I mean, there are so many variables, you know, the people, the places, the quality of the actual machines, the qualities of the voices, the actual quality of the internet at that moment. And of course, when I listened to it this morning, I'd only just got up. I think it was a little bit before my first cup of coffee. So there was a very, you know, everything about it was very different. But I felt that it was sparser this evening, and it had more. I felt it had just a different variety of sound, basically, a very, very different character.
I think perhaps we could revisit this question when the recordings are posted. And at that point, then we do all kind of step out of that immersive experience and witness it as a kind of congealed thing. And maybe then we can hear some differences and be analytical about why those differences occurred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Wow. I think we're kind of at time. So
there's an interesting question come up in the chat. Lawrence, where are you still there? Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I thought we were just doing it by chat. Sorry.
No, it was just to let us know that you had a question.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't get how that worked. So I live in a town of like 180 people. So is that urban? And we're 12 miles from the nearest town. I mean, we have sounds, but I mean, and don't feel like you're being exclusive if you say, well, that's not what our idea was. You know, we have more people in our garage than that. So.
No. I mean, I think technically the category of urban is a town and up. I can't remember what number of people a town constitutes as. But I mean, right now I'm living in a village. So that's definitely smaller than a town. And I found almost every site I needed. I was missing one site. But so, yes, definitely. please go out and explore.
And it's not like I never go to a town, but especially right now, my life is probably.
I thought your question has an interesting aspect to it because we could look for population as the definition of urban, right? And that are we counting trees? Are we counting rivers? Are we counting rocks and birds, right? So that seems like to me a data qualification. But I think that if we look to contemporary notions about what is the social, that how the engagement, the encounter, the complexity of it, I think, of course, your town would be an urban condition. It's got a complexity of ecological systems in it at the very least, yeah?
Well, I guess, you know, I grew up in San Francisco, which is certainly an urban place. And one of the things I noticed is that even though I grew up in this large city in a larger metropolitan area, basically most people never got out of their 180 people. I think there's Dunbar's number, 150, you know, so it's like most people, they don't get outside of that number anyway. And a lot of people don't go outside of their neighborhood. So effectively, they just live in the village. It just happens to have the downside of all of the things that people have been talking about. It's like, you know, the cement and everything. But and I was thinking like, well, what kind of what could I contribute, you know, in terms of, I was particularly interested in the bells. Who was doing that bells thing? Oh, okay, Anne. I love you, so I want to do, I do want to do your bell thing with you. So how do I hook up? How do I hook up with you? Or you probably have said this a number of times. It's probably been in some kind of the memo that I didn't read, you know. But how would I get the bells to you, or how would that work?
So today, Lisa made the whole exhibition live. So now you're able to go onto the website and look at all of our works, and then have the instructions on there to turn, in my case, to turn an object into a bell, or, you know, in Colin's case, to investigate a sound and turn it into kind of an image sound, and all these different ways that you can participate in all of our works. And so all of those are on the website now, so that you don't have to remember the instructions. And then if you'd like to send back how you did that with some kind of documentation, whether it's a recording, in Raheel's case, or you know, a picture, then you can send those back to Lisa or tag the festival and the exhibition, and then we'll all be able to see them. So that and in that sense, the engagement of like a human person with kind of technology, or different ways that we're all kind of engaging with cityscapes, I think, is another part of the urban versus rural. Even if you're asking for someone to listen for a bird, if you're doing that in the middle of San Francisco, or if you're doing that in the middle of a, you know, totally empty island, those are really different engagements with that sound. And so I think some of the urban is, you know, what community, what space, what technology are you around as you enact these different scores. But yeah, I think Michael just posted the website again, so that's in the chat now.
Okay, okay, I appreciate that. I'm actually doing, I'm putting together a symphony of bell sounds. So when somebody says, "Oh, I'm doing a thing in bells," they're like, "Oh yeah, let me see what they're doing." You know, like if we get some ideas to incorporate or confiscate, or however we'll put it.
Awesome.
I love that point, though, that you made, that so many people don't go out of their village, even if they live in a massive city. And I think one of the great things about this exhibition is it does encourage you to get out. You know, you even have to go to the suburbs.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, Cathy, one of the things I noticed too is that, especially if you have like some kind of like weird gear, if you go out and you're taking sound images, it doesn't take long before people start asking you, "Well, what are you doing?" You know, and then now you have a chance for engagement to transmit not only an idea, but perhaps be a vector for the ideas themselves, and so maybe another person can get that and get something from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And indeed, I mean, actually, it's a shame that Yara Mekwe couldn't join us today, but she's based in Cairo, where the idea of what are you doing when your sound recording takes on a whole new dimension, because it's actually illegal and you can be imprisoned for sound recording in the urban.
Yeah.
These things have all got kind of different degrees of different degrees of welcome communication or not.
Yeah. And paying attention to sound has also different implications depending on where you are, not just in terms of human context, but in terms of your own context. You know, like how you listen. At least for me, I'll say that how I listen in my town, how I listen in the city, why I listen in the city, and how I listen in the city, whole different thing. How I listen in my house, you know, it's like, and why I listen, you know, and at what level, the subliminal and all that. That's what I'm kind of interested in. just to give you a context, my latest finished work was actually a piece for the prisons to help the inmates go to sleep, you know. So the administration let me put that on their prison channel at night when they finish. For the guys who have a hard time like sleeping, then they put that on. And so I was able to go into the prison for the first time in about 4 months. And inmates were just finding me, hey man, I really like that thing. Are you on acid? So it was, sound plays a big part in what we're doing. So I really appreciate being part of this, you know, having a chance to listen to other sound freaks.
If there's anywhere that we can listen to any of your work, please post it in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, I have a YouTube channel, so you could see my work. It isn't. I do animations and I do the sound for the animation, so I wouldn't say it's like strictly sound. So if that's what you're looking for, that won't happen. But you can see some of my work, and I will be posting that video that I did for the prison. I'll post that probably in another couple of weeks.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for any of the artists? So I'm going to give Lisa the last word, but I'm going to have the last but one word. I feel really thank you to everybody, because I feel really excited to go out and do some of this work. If you're forced to have a staycation, it's the ideal activity. You could do it with your friends, with your family, with your kids. So yeah, we hope to see some of your traces. And from me, thank you very much for coming, and hand over to Lisa to say.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly that. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you so much to the artists. It's been really fascinating to hear even more about the pieces and how it explores the urban, and we can start pulling apart what this sonic urban is, and hopefully rebuilding it in the way that we want through these fantastic gestures. I'm going to put a link to the website in the chat box, just in case you missed it. So please do go over and start enacting. Do read through the site. It takes a bit of digesting before you go out and start enacting the work. So just a heads up. But yeah, hopefully we'll all reconnect in some form of trace over the next few months. Thank you very much.
One last thing, we will be having a closing event at some point in the autumn. So if you want to be kept up to date with what's happening, you need to sign up on the CRiSAP mailing list. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.